Okay, without further ado, I think we'll get started. We've got lots to cover. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. I'm so pleased that so many of you could make it today, and I think this is going to be a really great webinar for everyone involved. My name is Juliana Stonehouse, and I'm the Student Experience Coordinator at Careerspace at Trent University. And I'm joined here today with my colleague Ryan Sisson, the coordinator of Trent Community Research.
Hey everyone, it's so nice to have everyone with us today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. And Juliana and I really hope that today's session will be mostly about sharing information. And we're also looking forward to the question and answer session at the end of our presentation.
Yes, absolutely. So what we're planning on doing today is sharing with you some of the background information about Careerspace for those of you that may not be familiar with what we're up to. And then also show you how we're working to support both our student body and community partners in general, and then especially during COVID. So just to do an overview of the agenda here, we're going to do a quick background of Careerspace and services available. Just to get everybody on board with what experiential learning actually is, and I'll talk a little bit about our mandated agreement with the province when we get to that one. Then Ryan's going to do an overview of all of the wonderful research that's being done out of the Trent Community Research Centre. And then we're going to have Q&A. Now the Q&A, we have found, Ryan and I have hosted several webinars now, and we're finding that the most valuable part of a webinar is actually in the question and answer period. So we're going to leave lots of room at the end to ask questions. So I really encourage you, while you're listening to the presentation, to think about you, your organization or business, and how you think that we can best support you. And then there's lots of questions that come when you're thinking about the day-to-day operations, and then how can we support you? Lots of good questions can come out of that. So I really encourage you to focus on that. And also the beautiful thing about the Q&A also is that there's some connections and networking that we've seen happen in the past. So that's a lovely highlight. So just to give you some quick background, so Careerspace at Trent is basically an opportunity for students and alumni to engage in meaningful experiences in a hands-on sort of environment. And one of the most meaningful experiences that we've heard coming back from students and alumni is those partnerships and those relationships that they've developed with our community and industry partners. And experiential learning is a wonderful way to prepare students for their future. So we've received lots of feedback from both students and employers saying, yes, my in-classroom time is very valuable, but also that time that I have outside of the classroom working in my field, whether it's a field placement or business or marketing or what have you, also really prepares the student to graduate Trent and get out into the workforce and have a really meaningful experience. Okay, so lots of opportunities for engagement at Trent. So Careerspace, you know, we sort of on the ground help support our students through resume writing, interview prep, and we offer career counseling. This is a really interesting part, and the focus is definitely on our students to support them. But Ryan and I were a part of a webinar months ago where we invited the federal government to come in and talk about what they're specifically looking for in student resumes for their student programs and job opportunities, and what they're looking for in an interview. And we found that session to be very, very helpful, because you are the ones as business owners and people part of the community and organizations, you're the one that are receiving these resumes, you're the one that are conducting these interviews. And so that feedback to us is really quite important, because then that helps us shape how we support our students. So we really encourage an open dialogue and communication between yourselves and us, specifically myself and Ryan, to give us that feedback on what you're seeing and what you need. We also have a student job board as part of the Student Experience Portal, which is a wonderful, launch. We've recently just launched it in the past couple of months, so students can look at that job board, and community partners can have a profile in that portal where they post all of their job postings as well as volunteer postings, internships, co-op programs. So it's an all-encompassing portal, and it's quite wonderful. And then the other thing that we can do, and this has taken a change obviously during COVID, but we can host virtual recruitment events. So if you are an employer and you're specifically looking to have conversations with students and let them know what's happening in your organization and recruit them possibly to your business, we can set that up. And we have done a couple of so far, and it's been wonderful, where we've had student participation and the employer comes, and it's much like a webinar series like what you're taking part in now. And it gives you the opportunity to have those face-to-face, even virtual connections with our students. On a larger scale, and some of you may already be aware of this, we do a volunteer expo, and that's set for September 2020. I think the date might be September 17th, but I will get back to you on that specific date. So all of you who are part of a volunteer organization or a non-for-profit, that would be very helpful for you to be a part of that. And then also the Career and Experience Expo, and that is set to take part in January 2021. Okay, moving along here. So we're going to do a short video for you that just sort of gives an overview of the services I've briefly spoken about at Careerspace.
Careerspace, our on-campus career center and experiential learning hub, is located on the top floor of the Student Center. All Trent students are guaranteed to have a career-related experiential learning opportunity before they graduate. Talk about an incredible way to gain the upper hand as you enter into the workforce. Through Careerspace at Trent, students in all programs have the opportunity to tap in to nearly limitless combinations of academics, in-class learning, and practical career experiences, with access to interview training, resume assistance, and a list of companies ready to give you some real-life experience. Let Careerspace show you the way to your own unique idea of success.
All right, thanks so much, everyone. So we actually have a quick poll for you that we're going to launch now. And so something should pop up on your screen in a moment. All right, so the first question is whether or not you're interested in hosting a remote or in-person placement student this fall. This is helpful for us just to give us a sense of who's in the chat room today. Okay, let's go ahead and share those responses. So thank you. It looks like there's some interest definitely today in exploring opportunities to learn a little bit more about in-person or remote placements for this fall, and also an opportunity to look at maybe future opportunities. So if this fall doesn't work for you, maybe there's some opportunities around placements down the road. So back to you, Juliana.
Lovely. Okay, so to just get into a little bit more about the experiential learning. So this is a term that is used widely to capture a lot of different ways that students can engage in learning outside of the classroom. Now, having said that, we also capture lab components as well as different field components that are also a part of some of our curricular activities, classroom activities at Trent. So, and this is a really important thing for Trent. We have a mandate agreement with the province that states that students need to be graduating with a hands-on learning experience. As I mentioned before, it just works to launch our graduates into the workforce that are ready to roll up their sleeves and get into some real work. This is very important for us to have established a really good connection with our community organizations, including all businesses, non-for-profits, governments, and all of you sort of from beginning to end. So to break up those EL experiences, we can break it up into two different categories. We have curricular and co-curricular experiential learning opportunities. So curricular means that it's typically associated, it is always associated with academic credit, and it always requires an engagement from an employer or an industry partner. And a lot of our programs have built in those curricular activities and those EL experiences within their academic program. So it's absolutely crucial for these students to be able to partner with organizations outside of the university in order to fulfill that requirement. Co-curricular, it doesn't necessarily have to be associated with an academic credit, and it usually involves a volunteer capacity and sometimes involves industry partners as well as employers. The Volunteer Expo is a really good event to connect students with a lot of volunteer experiences in the community. And as I mentioned, that will be happening in September of this year. And so more information to follow that. So curricular experiential learning examples of that are field placements, field experiences, both domestic and international. And the international piece is really quite exciting because we have sent students to Egypt for big digs as a part of our archaeological programs. We also have professional practicums, including like nursing, education, social work, also academic and professional conferences, performances, co-ops, etc. And I'll get into those in the following slides. So cooperative education, so this is a very specific term, and I know that, you know, when we talk about co-op, that's a term that I think a lot of people use to encompass, you know, everything that the student could be doing outside of the classroom. But we really have a specific agenda when it comes to co-op education at Trent. And currently there are 2 programs that have a built-in co-op placement. And what that is, it's a alternative work term and then academic term. So for computing systems, for example, their first year is all sort of in classroom work, including the summer. And then their second year, they start in September for a work term, for a 4-month work term. Then they move to the classroom for the winter term, and so on and so forth. And so that takes them through their entire year. So that's what we like to define as cooperative education. Placements and practicums, so these are those academic programs that I mentioned before that have that specific EL component built into their academic programming. So you see education, nursing, social work. Some of you may or may not be aware forensic science is a big one. School of Business is also a big one, and those tend to be very popular with our student body. In fact, we have this wonderful example of one of our business students, Matthew Urquhart, and he was in the School of Business, and he did a placement with Community Futures Peterborough. And after completing his placement, which is part of his academic requirements, he was offered a full-time job at this non-for-profit. So that is a lovely example of how we can check off all the boxes for students and Trent and community partners as well. Obviously, medical sciences and agriculture. And agriculture is another big one, especially now in COVID, where there's a lot of farmers who are looking for that help on their farm. And it's not necessarily sort of in the field doing work. It's how to be creative with rejigging their marketing practices and pick up and drop off, especially during COVID. And we've had lots of uptake in that industry over the past couple of months. So other curricular experiential learning opportunities, community-based research, with Ryan will speak to in a moment, and that's very, very exciting. All of the research opportunities that students can go through, and Ryan's going to share with you some 2 pretty incredible research projects that our students have taken a part in. There can be an original thesis, which can also be built in as part of the students' academic requirements. There's field study courses, research assistant positions, and then reading courses. And these all can take part as part of curriculum, as well as including employer and businesses in the community. So now I'd like to turn it over to Ryan to talk a little bit about the wonderful research that's happening out of the center that he oversees.
So hi everyone, again, it's my pleasure to be with you today. Before I go ahead and get started, I just wanted to draw your attention to two points of contact for the Trent Community Research Centre. The first is our website. It's trentu.ca/TCRC, and I would encourage you to please check our website out. You'll notice on our webpage we have 3 tabs along the top. One is for community, such as yourselves, for students and for faculty. And under that community tab, it really explains and walks through what the steps are in our research. And we're going to talk about some of those today. You'll also find a community proposal form. And that is the first step really for community-based research, is finding out what your needs are as a community organization. So community-based research is a type of experiential learning that's typically done by students in their 3rd and 4th year. And if you have any questions from today's presentation, again, I would encourage you to reach out to us. Our email is tcrc@trentu.ca. When we talk about community-based research, one of the things that we really like to point out is that community-based research is quite a bit different from other types of research that's done at the institution. And our hope is that students have the type of transformational experience that this student did. So to quote the student, "Community-based research is more than a supplement to my education. It's shaped how I look at the world, how I think, and how I interact with my community." And I'd like to go ahead and just share with you just a quick video that talks about some of the differences between community-based research and other types of research that you might be a little bit more familiar with.
According to Carrie Strand and her colleagues, community-based research is a partnership of students, faculty, and community members who collaboratively engage in research with the purpose of solving a pressing community problem or affecting social change. Let's think about different types of research along a continuum. Conventional research is driven by the researcher. They develop the questions and methods, collect the data, and publish the findings in academic journals. Community-placed research is research that's conducted in or about a community, but is still researcher-driven. Community members may act as participants, but they may not be interested or invested in the results of the research. For example, a professor may want to know how effective a certain radio advertising campaign has been, so they interview people about their listening and shopping habits. Community-based research is research with the community. There's a mutually respectful relationship with community partners in identifying research problems, conducting research, analyzing data, and sharing findings with the community. Community-based research partnerships strive to involve all participants in each stage of the research. There are some key principles that distinguish community-based research from traditional research approaches. According to researchers Oshaka and Jansen, community-based research should be relevant, equitable, and action-oriented. Research is relevant when questions come from the community and when community partners create and share knowledge that is meaningful to the communities where they work. Research is equitable when all partners work to overcome the power imbalances between academic institutions and community groups by prioritizing the needs of the community and recognize that both researchers and communities have relevant expertise. Research is action-oriented when partners build on a community's strengths and resources, share knowledge and findings, experience mutual benefits from the research, and engage in efforts to make welcome change to the community. Community-based research can be highly collaborative, with all members of a team, community members, community partners, researchers, acting as equals in planning and conducting research, using funding and sharing findings to improve communities. For example, a team of students and faculty can work with community organizations over a long period, meeting regularly to define and reshape a project as research results come in. Community-based research can also benefit both students and communities. It can improve community well-being by bringing people with different expertise together to tackle problems. And it increases the relevance and the quality of the research. Students benefit by applying their academic skills and experience to understand and solve real-world community problems.
So in short, what the video does is it basically explains that community-based research is not necessarily a specific type of research. It's rather an approach to research where the community members, the students, the faculty members, and then the facilitators, such as our research center, are really on equal footing. And that's not necessarily always the case. We might be more familiar with, for instance, certain types of thesis-based research where it's the student or the faculty's intellectual curiosity that's driving that research. So sometimes we hear the term, or we hear from communities that they're tired of being studied. That the research that's being done on the community may not necessarily be of particular use to the community. So community-based research is quite different in that it comes from you, it comes from your organization. And what we often find is we have a rich history of working with organizations over the past nearly 30 years in Peterborough, Durham, Northumberland, City of Kawartha Lakes, as well as we have a sister organization known as ULinks that supports organizations in Haliburton County. And the hope is that when community-based research involves all of those parties together, it can actually be used to help direct community development. And when I mentioned the types of, or the regions where we do community-based research, I should mention that we don't necessarily work with a specific type of organization. So as you can see from the list here, we work with organizations in conservation work, both heritage and environmental. We work with organizations involved in the justice system, with mental health. We work with municipal governments. We work with all kinds of social services. We work with businesses, and specifically, we've done a lot of work around economic impact assessments and looking at program efficacy. So a big thing that we hear from community members is, I've lost funding, or I'm going to lose funding for a program that I'm running, and we feel that the program's been very successful and we'd like to keep that program going, but now we need to change our funding source. So we might need to now apply, the organization might now need to apply for a grant. And a big part of that is the metrics. So how can you actually demonstrate the efficacy or the effectiveness of that program? So our students will often come in and look at impact. And we found that that's been quite helpful in terms of community partners that are applying for those types of fundings, just as one example. We have 4 outcomes. So if you go on our website and you look at our research proposal, you'll see that community-based research, our program is driven by 4 outcomes. One, that the research that the students embark in is thorough, that there are positive benefits, both social, cultural, as well as economic and environmental health of the community. We strive to strengthen our local partnerships, and often our research doesn't just include one community partner and a student. It often includes several community organizations that are coming together because they share the same type of research needs. And at the end of the day, just as the student quote spoke to at the beginning of my presentation, we do hope that the student experience will be transformational. And we often find that for students, because of the number of hours that they put into a project, which is typically 220 hours, students grow their professional network and their personal network. And we're not surprised when we hear from students that they've actually had a job offer from their community host or community partner. One of the other things that's quite unique in terms of our project cycle is that for the most part, students will start their research in September and their research will conclude by April. However, our intake cycle happens on a term-by-term basis. So we also have opportunities where students can conduct their research over a 4-month period, say the fall semester or the winter semester or the spring and summer semester. It really depends on the organization's needs and whether or not we have students that are able to conduct that research within those timelines. So as you can see here with the project cycle, we always start with the community. It's a community first approach in the sense that we are always happy to take in proposals. We will meet with you, we'll go through the proposals, we'll look at things like scope and what the appropriate number of students might be for a particular project. Students can be matched at Trent across all disciplines. So this research isn't specific to, say, the School of Business or the School of the Environment. We really do have students across all programs that are doing this type of research. Typically, the research and service work is the main part of the research. So if we look at students conducting research from September to April, the majority of their time is going to be on the actual research itself. And this could be going out in the field. More likely, it's conducting research by phone, by Zoom or video call, or conducting research through surveys done by email. So we don't expect to see a real change in terms of how the research is being done with our center, which is quite positive, I think, in terms of our research potential for students. At the end of the day, the community-based research is meant to be shared. It's meant to be shared fully with the public, and that's one of the things that we encourage, that the research doesn't just benefit the community organization, but that it also benefits the wider community. And so the information is shared through Trent's digital archive. It's also shared publicly at a celebration of research, and our students are often eager to share their research to your board of directors or to members of your organization. We had students last year that presented to the Peterborough Police Services Board, for instance. So it really just depends on the type of project that you have in mind. As I might have mentioned earlier, Trent opportunities for research are across the spectrum. So we have students from history to math, the business studies program, gender and women's studies, psychology. Really the student interest is quite widespread. For instance, we had Adam Call, who recently completed a project through Peterborough's Workforce Development Board, and quite timely because it was looking at the economic impact of international students on Peterborough's local economy. And you might not be able to read the quote in the bottom right, but Adam said, "I found the opportunity to work with a faculty member to produce meaningful data, something that can't be replicated in any course or program. The experience you get is exceptional, especially if you're looking to take the thesis route to further your education and want to get some experience before you take the plunge." Adam's research was really interesting for this area because he looked at the economic impact of international students that were attending schools, so Fleming and Trent, and he also was able to interview those students to ask them about the types of services that they've accessed or are aware of in the community. And Adam has presented his research, I think, 3 times now, both to the Workforce Development Board and then also publicly through a similar webinar. Last Friday, Emma Kazeki presented her research. Emma's a recent graduate of the Forensic Science program, and Emma's research was being done for the Human Services and Justice Coordinating Committee. And Emma's research was unique in that it was really trying to get to the heart of the housing challenge that Peterborough and many cities like Peterborough are facing. And so this particular project accessed data that had been collected the previous year by one of Emma's colleagues, a previous student in a forensic science course. And so we often will see this as well, where the community puts forward a research project. The research project then generates more questions, and so the community agency will contact us and say, "Hey, we think there's more to this," or the student has discovered this as a potential opportunity. Can we put in another research project that sort of moves the marker along? And that's what happened in this case. Emma was able to look specifically at Peterborough and interviewed local organizations and made some recommendations. So in a nutshell, that is the Trent Community Research Centre. Again, I would encourage you, please, if you have any questions based on today's presentation, to visit us at TCRC, trentu.ca/TCRC, or to email me at tcrc@trentu.ca. And again, I'm really, really thankful to have had the opportunity to share a little bit about our program with you today.
Thanks, Ryan. That's so exciting, especially given the examples of Adam and Emma's research. It was quite amazing to be a part of those presentations and just what these students are actually, capable of doing and the support they receive from our community. It's wonderful. So here's the real meat of the presentation, which I think that you're all probably really interested in, is our, how we've dealt with the COVID. So our COVID response in terms of supporting students, getting placements, and then also how to engage our community to support our small businesses. So the first thing I want to touch on is the SWIP funding, or the Student Workplace Funding. So there are several organizations that are federally funded that provide wage subsidies for students looking for work. They provide the subsidies to the employer. During COVID, they have opened up, these organizations have opened up that funding to include post-secondary institutions, which they hadn't before. So we've been able to not only secure some funding for some small businesses in and around Peterborough, but then also within Trent, we've been able to secure some funding. And there was part of the Sustainable Agricultural and Food Systems program. There's a student organization that was looking to plant some gardens on campus and needed some extra help. So we were able to secure some funding through one of those organizations, Eco Canada. And I have a document that I will share with all of you after the, or posted on our website after the presentation, which gives an outline of each one of those organizations and what the requirements are to secure that funding. And I'll have to let you know that in my conversations with each one of these representatives from the organizations, they are desperately trying to place students, to support businesses and place students because they need to use that federal money up before the end of their fiscal year, which is in March 2021, because however much money they spend this year will determine how much funding they get to secure for next year. So these organizations have also, in response, really relaxed their regulations and rules around who can get what funding. So for instance, the Eco Canada example, they were very happy to relax some of their requirements in terms of what jobs they will support. And a lot of the same organizations, a lot of the organizations have done the same. So that's a really great opportunity for any businesses that are sort of struggling to sort of reconfigure their business during COVID and just need the help but don't have the resources. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to get involved in. I'd be happy to take questions about that during this webinar, or you're more than welcome to reach out to me after. Our team has also been attending on a weekly or sometimes twice or three times a week the workplace integrated learning boards that exist, so CASE and CWIL. And all of those organizations, or all of the, a lot of those people that sit at those tables are other post-secondaries, and so we're getting to know the trends and what's happening and what other post-secondary institutions are doing to support their student body, as well as their faculty, as well as their region in terms of businesses and industry partners. We've also started, well, it has been in existence, but it's kind of taken a different shape during COVID, the EL Working Group on campus. And so that's a closed group on campus with all of our program and placement coordinators that take part in a bi-weekly meeting. So we talk about the challenges that these coordinators are facing in terms of placing their students for academic credit within those programs. And so that's really great information, firsthand information that Ryan and I get to have, that we then take out into the community and say, hey, there might be a possible placement here or partnership here, and just really working to connect those placement coordinators with members of the community. We've also updated our strategy in terms of employer outreach, and this webinar is an example of one of them. Some of you may be getting different messaging when you're posting jobs on our job board. So we're really being quite active in terms of reaching out to our employers. And it's not necessarily to, say, can you do this for us? It's more of a, what can we do for you? How can we support you? Because we know and we understand that there may be some struggles that you're having, and we just feel like we have the opportunity, especially with the SWIP funding and students looking for work and placements, we really can check off all the boxes there. Some remote learning. So what we're doing currently now at Trent is we're looking to figure out how we can best support students and community partners with some remote learning opportunities. So, just because we have COVID doesn't mean that we are necessarily, not looking for placements. And in fact, really trying to get creative and think outside the box in terms of how do we support the community and get our students placements. And if that is in a remote learning capacity, then so be it. And how can we make the most of those opportunities? The other really interesting one that's kind of taken off because of COVID, there's all these COVID silver linings. So we've partnered with a lovely organization called 10,000 Coffees, and the rep at 10,000 Coffees just happens to be a Trent graduate. And what 10,000 Coffees is, it's an online networking platform. So people can be a part of to sign up for what we call Trent U Connect, which is supported by 10,000 Coffees. And what it does is it introduces staff, faculty, students, alumni, and community partners all into a virtual networking system. And then each month introductions are made. So when you do your profile, you can say, oh, I'm in the agricultural sector. And then you could be matched with a student who is taking part in the agriculture and food systems. And then there's an online form where you can have a chat, or you can meet over Zoom and have a really meaningful networking opportunity. Now, this is just not, again, because of COVID, 10,000 Coffees have opened up this platform for community partners. So you don't necessarily have to be a student or an alumni. You're more than welcome to sign up. And again, I will send that information out after this seminar. And sort of what that does, it puts you in touch with not only students and alumni, but also staff and faculty. So there's a lot of emails I'm getting right now from small businesses who are looking to connect with a specific program, because they're looking for students to help with some really high level work, such as like marketing or rebranding, especially during COVID. So that's a wonderful networking opportunity that has really taken off. So I think now we will open it up for some questions. I see that there's no questions in the Q&A, but please feel free. We'll give you a moment to think about if we can offer you any more information, especially about the funding. I know that funding model has been really popular when I have one-on-one conversations with employers in Peterborough. And we will, while you're thinking about that, we're going to launch the next poll. Okay, we've got our first question from Julia. For the funding program, the students have to be on T4 or contracts is okay? Yes, contracts are definitely okay. And it really depends on what the job is and what organization that I can help you be matched with. So for instance, there's different funding requirements for different organizations. But yes, a contract is completely fine. Any kind of work term or any work that a student's getting paid for, they're more than happy to assist in that. Great question, Julia. Thanks so much for that.
Juliana, I do see that there's in the second part of the poll that there was strong interest in the job board, and I just wondered if you could walk through some of the participants today with how that process works. If I'm an organization and I want to post a job opportunity on the job board, what do I do? What's the next step?
Absolutely. So the first step would be to reach out to us to let us know that you do have a job you'd like to be posted. So you can email worklink@trentu.ca. That's worklink@trentu.ca with just your contact information. And then you have an option from there. We'd be more than happy to set you up with a profile for you to be the main contact, and we'll profile your organization so that you can then go in and manage an account essentially on that portal. Or you're more than welcome to do it on your own, and we can walk you through those steps. And what that allows you, it allows you access to go in and to put in specific start and end dates into your job description, as well as update the job description, put in more information, and then also, you just have an inside scoop into that portal. But the way to get started on that is to email worklink@trentu.ca. And that's a really good start to sort of partnering and having some opportunities in terms of, we've found that a lot of people that start and they post a job, then that relationship tends to grow. So then they do a recruitment with us, and then they're involved in a career fair and just become part of the fold, which is quite lovely. Okay, So great question from Nancy here. If we already have an account, do we need to set a new one up? No, Nancy. Once you have an account, you're on. Sometimes accounts will expire depending on activity. So if you go ahead and you log into your account and you don't see any activity, then we'd be more than happy to help you make that active again and again. Just reach out to us through WorkLink. Thank you so much. We've got one here. Is there a cost for your services? No, this is the beautiful thing about what we do is we really do look to simply support our students and community partners by placing students in some job opportunities and some experiential learning opportunities. So no, there's no cost to our services. In terms of the career fair, if you're looking to set up a booth, we're looking at doing rejigging our cost structure for that, but that's information to follow on that one.
Juliana, I would just add as well, with community-based research, we often get that question in terms of a cost. Does TCRC or does Trent charge a fee for that research? And the answer really is no. It depends in terms of the types of research that you're looking to do. Trent doesn't charge a fee at all. However, there may be costs associated with the types of research you're looking to have done. And so typically we would look to the host to provide some funding for those types of research costs. But outside of that, I would say for the most part, for maybe some transportation costs to support students, or other costs maybe for equipment or that sort of thing, it really is, the cost would be rather minimal.
Okay, so next one from Layla McKay. Are we able to have virtual recruitment events, and how would this work? Yes, Layla. So that's exactly what I'm doing right now, is for our volunteer fair that we typically do in person in the fall. We're looking to do that virtually. So it would basically take the format of something similar to a webinar series. However, we would do what we call a breakout room. So within the Zoom platform, there's a component where we would do a breakout room. And so we would give employers their own Zoom ID so that students could jump in and out of a meeting with our individual partners who are taking part in those fairs. I'm actually going to a webinar on Monday to learn more details about how to launch that kind of platform. And so really looking forward to hosting some events next year, at least in the fall, virtually. Great question, Layla. Thanks so much. Okay, we have a question from a community partner, day program staff at Sunrise Youth Group. We typically offer placements for students in social work, development, or child services field. Would the students from Trent be interested in a possible Zoom placement opportunity, as this is what we're offering due to COVID-19? Oh, what a wonderful opportunity for a lot of our students. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and say we would love to entertain that kind of engagement. I can't speak on behalf of those individual departments, such as our social work department, but what I'll do, if you wanted to, what I'll do is I'm going to write your name down and get in touch with you afterwards, and then put you in direct contact with those departments, and then you can work with them to work on some placements. But that's a wonderful offer. Thank you so much. And the next question, Andrea Walsh. In general, are there significant changes to organizations' confidentiality agreements and data security arrangements when students are working remotely as opposed to on-campus offices? Yeah, so that's, so, you know, in the light of COVID, and that's part of our remote planning, Andrea, is exactly that piece. We're trying to sort of figure out how do we maintain the integrity of the program when people are working from their own homes, and confidentiality and the risk associated with changing the format a little bit. So we are actively working to come up with some policies surrounding that, and we will absolutely keep everybody updated on what that looks like.
Okay, folks, any last questions for Juliana or myself regarding experiential learning opportunities or career services that that we provide here at Trent? Wonderful. All right, well, on behalf of Juliana and myself, again, we just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We hope that this is one of many sessions. So next time you tune in, hopefully we'll have the video volume situation worked out, but really on you know, we know that it's folks are having pretty busy lives right now with everything that's going on, and we do certainly appreciate it, and we hope that it for many of you that are tuned in today, we hope that this is the beginning of a series of conversations with you, and we hope that it will lead to some really interesting partnerships and opportunities for all of us. So thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.